So tonight we have Joe Ember. Sorry, I met Joe at a training course. I went to a suicide intervention training course, and Joe was one of the instructors. And during the course of the small groups that we had, he ended up sharing some pieces of his life, and I got really interested, and I invited him to come and speak. So, Joe Ember.
So here I am.
So,
This might not be warranted. David mentioned that this being the first in a series, he was hopeful to attract speakers that relate to the work that is done at Canadian Centers for Mental Families. I hopefully, apparently, am a man, and I come from a family, so I'm going to do my best to tie my story into those two facets. And before I really get into Joe and the life that I've lived, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. There's no role playing involved, but if you're not comfortable closing your eyes, please don't. But if it helps you to envision something, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, or invite you to close your eyes. And I would ask you to envision an alcoholic, whatever that looks like to you. Okay? It doesn't have to be anything specific, just whatever it looks like to you. And once you've got that image in your mind, I'd like you then to maybe envision a drug addict. Might be the same person, might be a different person. Maybe they're standing side by side. And once you've got those two images, I'd like you to envision a homeless person. And then finally, I would like you to envision a convict. And then I'd like you to look at me and see all four. So that's a little bit about who I am. On career day in grade 6, I assure you, I did not put up my hand and say, I hope to God I'm homeless one day, or I really want to be a crack addict. But that's where life took me. Not necessarily by choices I consciously made. We are, I think most of us in the room are aware, shaped as very young children. We are formed, we are molded, we're almost virtually designed in the ages of adolescence, 1, 2, 3, 4 years old. We're designed to be the people that we're going to grow into in adolescence. Some are extremely lucky and have the most formative, caring, supportive, adoring parents one could ever hope for. They come from families of pure nurture. And I dare say their chances of success are better than those who don't come from such a family. I come from a family that had, well, you all wish you had my mom. I'll put it that way. My mom was the model for moms. I am a mama's boy, and I will forever be proud to put my hand up and say I'm a mama's boy, because she gave me everything that is good about Joe. My father, he grew up in a very difficult household. Dad grew up in a tough home, so Dad grew up tough. And Dad taught tough. My earliest memories of Dad were dry it up, or I'll give you something to cry about. I should stop. If I do or say anything that triggers anybody, please let me know, and I will back off. Okay? I'm sharing my story, and I don't know how my story may affect another person. So please feel free to say, okay, Joe, that's enough. I can go on to something humorous. So yeah, Dad grew up tough, and Dad taught tough. Dad also was very successful. And when I say very successful, I mean that by the time he was in his late 20s, he was a millionaire. Dad knew business. Mom knew love. Mom knew family. Dad knew organizations. Dad knew money. Mom knew hugs. My father always showed the kids, and there are 4 of us, how much he loved us by the size of the gifts that he gave us. So I knew when I got my dirt bike on my 11th birthday that Dad really loved me. Okay, and I knew when I got a snowmobile on my 12th birthday that Dad loved me even more. But it was the hugs that Mom would give me if I just came up and clasped her leg while she was doing the laundry that let me know how much she loved me. And they're two very different forms. And they seem to convey very different meanings. At least for this kid, they did. I grew up terrified of my dad. I'm not proud of it. I'm not ashamed of it. It is what it is. I grew up terrified of my dad. I'm going to give you an example of why I was terrified of Dad. I was a late bedwetter. Right? Until the age of 7 or 8, it was not infrequent for me to wet the bed. I haven't gone through all the motions and psychoanalysis that might give me reasons for that, because I don't need to, because at 52 I don't wet the bed anymore. So I'm really not all that concerned with it. I do know that at the age of 4 or 5, if I wet the bed and I went into Mom and Dad's bedroom and I tried to wake Mom up quietly to ask her to fix the bed for me so I could go back to sleep, she always did. And she always said, "It's okay, Joe." And she made the bed with no fuss and gave me a hug. Dad's answer was to beat me with a belt, because that would stop me from peeing the bed. I can assure you it didn't work. It did not work. All right? The results that were sought were not realized. The unfortunate result was I grew up afraid. You know, Dad used to work late. I knew he'd be home at 6 o'clock every night, Monday through Friday. So up until 5 o'clock, life was glorious. Mom would make a point of sitting down and watching TV with the boys. My sister, if she was home, we'd watch the Brady Bunch, and we'd watch Get Smart and Emergency and whatever else was on, and we'd have a great time. But man, by 5:30, the butterflies would start. By 5:45, my stomach was in knots. At 6 o'clock, we'd hear the car in the driveway, and then life just changed. And Dad, God knows I love you, man. I'm not talking shit about you. Sorry for that. Oops. You'll have to bleep that out. It just is what it is, right? So, I grew up in a 26-room mansion with an Olympic-sized pool. Dad drove a Porsche. Mom was in the curling club and various other local communities. Went to good schools. I actually went to school in Europe for a couple of years. So from the outside, I was a kid with a silver spoon in his mouth. From the outside, I had the life that every one of my friends wanted. I mentioned the snowmobiles. I mentioned the dirt bikes. How could my friends not be envious of that? But that's only what they saw from the outside, right? We don't share the crap. We don't show off shiny new bruises to our friends. We show off shiny new toys. We don't talk about the fact that, you know, the childhood monsters in my home didn't all live under the bed. Some of them lived down the hall. So what did that mean for me? What did that mean for Joe? Joe was a really, really warm and loving young man. I mean, I cared about everything and everyone until I didn't. And I don't remember exactly when that changed, but it started changing when I went to Europe. I was 11, and Dad sent me to Europe to go to school for 2 years. And hey, sounds great. 11 years old, you get to go tour Europe. Awesome. Except I didn't want to go, and I was forced to go. And those weren't good premises for me to enjoy myself. So things started changing then. When I started school in Europe, I stopped applying myself. I stopped caring about my grades. I stopped caring about whether or not I succeeded. And it showed through everything. When I got home, 13, turning 14 the next year and off to high school. And I discovered in high school similar things to what a lot of people discover in high school: drugs and alcohol. I actually discovered alcohol at the age of 12. Baby Duck and White Owl cigars. Man, that was the way to go. If you've never tried it, don't. I'll never forget, actually, I'm going to back up for a second, the first time that I ever got violently ill on Baby Duck. I was out drinking with my friends at 12 years old, and I went home and snuck in the house. Mom and Dad were either out or in bed already. And I got sick in my bed, and Mom came to wake me up on Saturday morning, and of course I'm out. Baby Duck is red. So my bed was red. So Mom freaked. She started screaming, thinking her boy had died in bed. And of course her screams aroused me out of my drunken stupor to go, Mom! And then she just got mad and started yelling louder. And it struck me that, wow, drinking has a whole lot of things involved with it. It was really fun, and then it really hurt, and it was really scary, and then it made people really angry. And so I decided I had to spend several years discovering just what drinking did for me. And that lasted 27 of several years. By the time that I was 14 years old, Dad had made it very, very clear that I was never going to be anything more than what the family business allowed me to be. I had dreams as a kid, I had some aspirations. Believe it or not, I wanted to be the next Jacques Cousteau. I was absolutely in love with the idea of oceanography. I was going to study ocean sciences. And all the wind was taken out of my sails with comments like, don't even bother, you'll never make it. Why are you studying so hard? You know you're going to fail. Comments like that were not really endearing and did not do a lot to further my passion for study. So that might be one of the reasons why, when I went to Europe and when I came back and went to high school here, that I didn't really apply myself, because I'd already begun to believe that I couldn't. I'd already begun to believe the messages I was being given. And the messages I was being given were, you're not good enough. You're going to fail. So I started to believe them. And why wouldn't I? These messages are coming from the most powerful man in my life. The most powerful man, as far as I knew, in all of Ontario and Quebec. He wasn't, but he thought he was in many respects. So, yeah, I let go of my dreams. I gave them up. Sold them. For nothing more than the opportunity to go to work for the family business. Now, that was not necessarily a mistake. Going to work for the family business taught me everything I know today about business. And I'm pretty fluent. I learned a lot. But I was also paid really well and had a burgeoning drug habit. And those two things didn't go well together. I spent my entire childhood, up until about the age of 12, when I started to drink Baby Duck, actually believing that drugs are bad. Don't do drugs. I bought into Nancy Reagan 100%. And then I tried my first joint of marijuana at the age of 15. Hadn't even turned 16 yet. And the people rolling it were my two best friends in the world. Nobody had my back like these two guys. Nobody. Not even my mom. I trusted my life with these two guys. Why wouldn't I? My best friends. Right? We did everything together. So when one of them rolled the joint and the other one said, yeah, let's smoke, and they turned around, looked in the back seat and said, hey, Joe, are you going to smoke? I was like, wow, you guys are. All right. And I did. And you know what? I didn't die. I didn't get arrested. I didn't break out in spots. Nothing bad happened. So from the next morning on, drugs are bad except for marijuana. And I tried hashish. And drugs are bad except for marijuana and hashish. And it went that way to a series of drugs. I got into the psychedelics, started with mushrooms, went to LSD. The only drug I have ever tried and did not like was mescaline. So you know what happened? I never did mescaline again. Every other drug that I tried, I loved. And I did them lots. I never tried any of the opiates because I don't like being quiet. I don't like being slow. I don't like being calm. I'm a little hyper. So I always went for the stimulants. Caffeine is my current stimulant, but it used to be cocaine. For years, I was 17 the first time I tried a couple of lines of cocaine. And by then, I mean, drugs are good, except for mescaline. So I tried cocaine, and it was great. It gave me all the courage I needed to do all the things I didn't have the courage to do. And you know, having said all of that, none of it was that bad. I'm going to stand here today and tell you that having said all of that, having tried all of those different things, and putting myself in various dangerous situations, none of it was really that bad or that terrifying. You know what was? Freebasing. Freebasing and crack cocaine, they're that bad. They're that terrifying. By the time I was 22, I was a full-blown freebase addict. And I started living my life as a freebase addict. Come to find out, when I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, by the age of 23, that crack and freebase are the same thing. So I proudly started calling myself a crack addict. I got married here in Ottawa in 1990 to a wonderful woman, very strong, a personality that could just hold a room. Angela's a great, great woman. We're friends to this day. Angela told me when we met, Joe, so to give you a bit of backup, when we met, I was doing lines of coke, and Angela saw it, and I was dealing lots of coke, and Angela knew it, and eventually, before we got married, asked me to stop using. Not dealing, because the money was good, but stop using. So I did. Imagine that, eh? Cocaine addict that stopped doing coke. I could do it for a minute for love. Unfortunately, that minute did not last. And when Angela and I got married and moved to Atlanta, things changed, and the I'm not going to do coke for love started to wane, and, you know, the idea became attractive. And I ended up finding a dealer and finding some cocaine and learning to get high all over again and hide it from people that love me. A couple of years later, we moved to Ocala, Florida, and by that time I was $300, $400, $500 of crack a day, every day, and still managing to hide it from my wife, my ex-wife. I got arrested on her birthday. Did not go over well. Angela was really, really understanding until I got arrested on her birthday. And I laugh about it now because, you know what, it's quite humorous. You feel free to laugh because there's something funny about it. Angela laughs about it today. I called Angela from the sheriff's station in Marion County, Florida, and said, yeah, so I'm not coming home because I've been arrested. And she said, you've been lying to me, haven't you? I said, what do you mean? She said, you're using again. I said, yeah, I've been using for a while. Angela had told me when we met to never ever lie to her. I don't care what you do, Joe, don't lie to me. If you cheat on me, come to me. Talk to me. We'll work it out, or we won't, but don't lie to me. And I lied to her for a really long time about my drug habit. So Angela told me on the phone that, you know, when you get out, we'll just go down to the courthouse. We'll take care of this. We'll go to divorce. And that's what we did. It was really simple. We're lucky because, you know, divorce in Florida is really easy. It costs $250 an hour of our time. And we were done. Split the assets ourselves. It was really, really simple. That's probably the brightest point of my crack cocaine addiction. Was the fact that I was able to simply get divorced from my wife and we still remain friends. There's nothing else that I can point to in 18 years of crack addiction that's bright. Not a single damn thing. I've been in and out of jail here in Ottawa somewhere around 9 times. Been arrested a lot. I became a professional thief to support my drug habit. Was never very proud of that. I tried dealing again to support my habit, but it didn't work because I have a habit. So in 2006, I did something that I hadn't done in 20 odd years. I asked somebody for help. I remembered, and this has to be divine intervention, because I'm telling you, when you're smoking $800 worth of crack every day, you don't remember much. But I remembered reading an article in the Ottawa Sun newspaper about the new Ottawa Drug Treatment Court that had formed in Ottawa in March of 2006. I got arrested in July 17th of 2006. And somehow I remembered reading that article I cannot credit myself for that because there's no way I should have remembered it. I couldn't remember yesterday. However, I remember reading that article and I reached out to my lawyer and I said, hey, Jerry, call the Ottawa Drug Treatment Court, ask them if they'll send somebody down and see if I'm a viable candidate. Jerry said, no problem, Joe, I'll take care of it. A couple of days go by and I haven't heard a thing. I'm sitting on my bunk in OCDC and pulling my hair out and I'm wondering what's going on. And a week goes by and I call Jerry back and I said, Jerry, what's going on? I haven't heard anything. What's going on with Drug Treatment Court? And he said, oh, you were serious. I said, yes, Jerry, for the first time in my life, I'm serious about getting help. Jerry had heard all my bullshit before. Jerry had heard my stories. Jerry had heard me say I want to change. Why would he believe me that first time? I don't blame the guy for not buying into it. However, when I did tell him yesterday I'm serious, he reached out to DTC and they sent someone down to interview me at OCDC. That person spent about 90 minutes with me. And I can't remember prior to that the last time anyone spent 90 minutes talking to me about me. I can't remember the last time anyone spent 90 minutes asking me who I am and what matters to Joe. Tell me a little bit about your childhood. Tell me what your teenage years were like. And it made me start to remember that there's a guy I used to know, and he was pretty damn cool. He was an alright guy, and I'd forgotten all about him. I'd hidden him away, I'd stuffed him down, I'd kicked him in the corner. I'd forgotten all about Joe. And I get a little bit emotional about it when I talk about it, and that's okay. So I told you I was arrested on July the 17th. That was 2006. My clean date is July the 18th, because I was high when I got arrested, believe me. My clean date is July the 18th, 2006. And thank God, through no small amount of hard work and a lot of asking for help, I haven't felt the need to use since. Coming up on 13 years, which is incredible to me. It's also the age I tend to act. Why the hell wouldn't I? I got back in touch with Joe. I got back in touch with that little guy. It's pretty amazing. So I let him out. All the time. All the time. I'm 52 years old, and I generally behave like I'm 15. Why wouldn't I? You know what I was doing before I came here? I live 6 minutes from here. Playing Call of Duty on my PlayStation. Because I'm 52 and I can. Right? Never mind what society tells me I have to be doing at the age of 52. Am I married? No! Do I have kids? No! Do I own my own home? No! Does any of that matter? No! Am I happy? Yeah. Happier than I've ever been in my life. I have now maybe 6 friends. And that sounds like a small circle. I've got 6 people in my life that will do anything for me. I've got 6 people in my life that I can pick up the phone and call at 4 a.m. If I need them, they'll be there. I've never had that in my life. I've never had that before. In all the years of providing people with all the dope that they needed, I never had somebody I could call at noon and have them be there for me. I have a life now that Dad tried to get me to understand I could have. He just tried to do it in a bit of a skewed fashion. Because for Dad, the home and the cars and the family, that all mattered. And thank God it did, or I wouldn't be here, right? If family didn't matter to Dad, there'd be no son. So thank God it did. You know, this has been a little scattered. I never plan what I'm going to talk about, and it's been a little bit scattered. I hope you've been able to follow it. But I want to say one thing about Dad, and that is I'm such a blessed individual. I got clean in 2006. My father died in 2013. So I had 7 years. I had 7 years to make a connection. And I'm not going to say that we became a loving father and son, because we didn't. But we did become friends. We became really good friends. We became the type of friends that could sit down and look each other in the eye and tell them the darned truth. And even though that might have aggravated me to hear it, or Dad to hear it, we could do it. And that mattered. The last words I said to my dad the night before he died were, "I love you, Dad." And the last words I heard from him were, "I love you, son." No, I don't think it gets much more perfect than that. That's the end. The middle was empty because Dad wasn't part of it. Drugs were part of it. The beginning was pretty dark. It was pretty scary. It filled me with anxiety. But you know what? All the best books I've ever read start out with a real grabber in the beginning. And you get through the middle and you're like, Jesus, I hope this gets better. And you get to the end, and often if we're lucky, the end just leaves you feeling like, man, I'm ever glad I read that book. And that's the way the chapters of my life with my dad were. Mom was the star of every page. I'm blessed for that. If I've got a couple of more minutes, I'm going to share a tiny thing about Mom. I'm a motorcycle rider. I've been riding motorcycles not long. Dad bought me that dirt bike when I was 11, and I rode that for a year or two and fell in love with bikes. But then drugs and alcohol got in the way, and I didn't own another bike for many, many years, not until I got clean. When I got clean, I bought a bike. Well, I got clean in 2006. I bought a bike in 2011, and I put somewhere around 60,000 kilometers on it. So I became a biker, and I was in a really bad accident in 2014, riding my big black cruiser, real loud bike, because, got to make that impression. Riding it down River Road south of Kelly's Landing on my way to Manitic, a car turned left in front of me. For no apparent reason. I mean, if you were watching it from above, it would almost look like I was a target, and she got me. She got me. So I collided with that vehicle that turned left in front of me, and I ended up breaking both my legs. And that took me off my bike. Took me off my bike for 3 months. I live in a 3-floor low-rise here in Vanya. No elevator. So my insurance company very astutely said, Mr. Enberg, I think you're going to have to find somewhere else to recuperate. You're not going to be able to do 3 flights of stairs. You're right. I said, well, I'll tell you where I want to go. I want to go to Garden Villas in Winchester. And I could hear the woman go, sorry, what? How could you possibly know where you want to go to retire? Or what retirement residence you want to go to? That's where my mom lived. Mom was in a home at that point. So I got to go recuperate in the same retirement residence that Mom lived in. And have breakfast, lunch, and supper with her every day for 90 days. And while it wasn't all great, because by the time Mom was in her 70s, she was getting a little cranky. That's okay. I think we all deserve to get a little cranky when we're in our 70s. It was one of the most wonderful experiences of my life. And you know what? I will say, it probably was the most wonderful experience of Mom's life, at least that she can remember. She was like a kid. She had her boy with her for breakfast, lunch, and supper for 3 months. The accident was May 25th. I moved into the home June 1st. I left August 31st. Mom died October 10th. Tell me the universe wasn't slowing me down to spend some time with Mom. Right? So that was 2014. 5 years ago, I'm 52, so I was 46, 47 years old. I was not spending a lot of time with Mom. All right? I don't know how much time you guys spend with your parents if you're fortunate enough that they're still around, but I sure wasn't spending a lot of time with Mom. I would go see her at the home once every 2-3 weeks. I was doing my sonly duty. Oh my God, I'm happy I had that accident. Thank God that woman turned left in front of me. Because it slowed me down. I got to spend some quality time with the woman who made the man you see before you. It was great. It was a blessing. All of the things that have happened in my life since 2006 have virtually been a blessing. It's been a lot of hard work. Doing this keeps me sober. Because it reminds me of who I am today and who I was yesterday and who I was 13 years ago. It also reminds me that no matter the beginnings, we get to write the ending. We get to write the ending. Doesn't matter how ugly the beginning of the book was. If we need to, we can tear that book in half and throw away the first 5 chapters. Get to write the end. So write a good ending. I'm still working on mine. But I'll tell you what, the closer I get, the better it gets. I'm writing a really good story. mine, and nobody else may find it interesting, but man, oh man, I love my book. I don't know what else, the stuff that scared little Joe, the stuff that stopped little Joe from being able to emotionally grow at about the age of 11, it was typical. There was a lot of psychological abuse. There was a lot of emotional abuse. There was some physical abuse. But it was the emotional and psychological, and you'll never be good enough, and why bother trying, and I'll give you something to cry about. That was the stuff that made me become an introvert. It made me crawl inside. And I crawled inside, man. I crawled inside as deep as I could. And when I couldn't get deeper, I found drugs to take me deeper. And they did. Took me to a hole, oh my good gracious. I lived in the sewers and made furniture out of the stuff floating through it. Metaphorically. But to be honest with you, just before going to jail that last time, I was living wrapped up in a barbecue cover in the bushes off of Island Park Drive down at the river. And I picked that location because there were some trees that hid me, but I was 200 meters away from some of the most valuable homes in Ottawa. And I would literally go, yeah, suckers, working for the man, you think you're all that? I got my crack pipe, I'm doing better than you are. What? What? Where in heck was I in my life that I thought I was in a good place? Waking up in the morning and shaking the earwigs out of my hair before going off to do whatever I needed to do to get the drugs I needed to survive that day. Wow. An experience. One I hope to never live again. One I'm glad I can talk about and laugh about a little bit. But please don't misunderstand and think that my history of drug abuse and drug use and drug lifestyle is something I find funny, because I don't. I don't find it funny at all. There are aspects of it that I need to laugh at, because the option, I mean, I go to enough sappy movies to cry. I don't need to cry at my own story, you know. I just got back from the Dominican. I snowmobiled almost 6,000 kilometers this winter. I still have a motorcycle. I actually bought the bike to replace the one that got wrecked from the hospital bed with casts on both legs. Never even seen it, but I knew I wanted it. And it's got 90,000 kilometers on it now. I make a point of enjoying every day as much as I possibly can. And if I'm having a bad day, I restart. I can start my day over any time at all. All it takes is sitting down, being quiet, wondering, discovering what it is that's agitating me and letting it go. I've got the people in my life to help me restart it. I hope this came across okay. And I hope you're honest enough to tell me things that maybe I should change up, or things that maybe I should add or take away from. And I'd really like all of you to be comfortable enough to ask me anything you want, because I promise you, having eaten out of dumpsters and lived in ditches, you can't offend me. I promise. You cannot offend me. So please feel free to ask me anything at all. I'm going to stop talking there, because I think I've said most of what I wanted to say, but I'd love to hear some questions. If you don't have any, that's fine too, but I really hope you do.
I'm interested in your siblings.
Yeah.
You said Dad was bad. I don't think it is that.
I'm glad you brought it up, because that could have
What
been a big
about
part
the
of it.
siblings? I mean, you know.
My older brother is 10 years older than I am. My older sister is 5 years older than I am. So my older brother, I idolized. He was the man that I loved in place of my dad. Because when I was 6, he was 16, right? So 16 was big enough to be the man that I could idolize. Couldn't idolize my dad, so I idolized my older brother. Also smart enough to get the heck out of the household at 16. Off he went to Alberta. So I understand that too. He couldn't fix what was going on. He could not be the remedy, and he had his own life to look after. My sister, God love her, one of my best friends today, maybe my best friend today. My sister suffered all of the same emotional and psychological abuses that I did. And, you know, I can remember hearing Dad yell at my sister and wishing I could do something to protect her. She's 5 years older than I am, so when she was 11 and getting yelled at, I was 6. And that's part of the reason I grew up to be a male savior. So all of my using years, every woman that I was with was a single mom on welfare with 3 or 4 kids who needed a knight in shining armor in her life. And I was always that knight. I was able to do it really, really well. I can be that knight in shining armor. Trouble is, the armor only shines for so long, right? The armor gets tarnished. And I'm looking for another woman who needs a knight in shining armor. And that's no way for any man or woman to live. Seeking out people to please, it's no way. It's not a life, really. We are trying to improve someone else's life at the expense of ourselves, and that's what I spent time doing when I learned at a very young age that women need protecting. That's basically what Dad taught me. My younger brother is adopted, so he was able to, I think, survive the emotional aspect of some of the abuse in an almost shell-like manner, because part of him could say, it's one messed up family, right? Because he was adopted, and he knew it from a very young age. So let's fast forward now through all the years of tumult and tragedy and good God, what a mess. My sister lived a very similar path to the one I did. Very heavily involved in cocaine and crack and street crime, and for years and years we used to have a bit of an unspoken contest going between us, my sister and I, as to who could get away with the best crime. And when she was prosecuted by the FBI and thrown in a maximum security women's penitentiary in Florida for 5 years, I ceded. She won. So yeah, my sister's path was very similar to mine. Like me, she's been clean and sober for a very good long time. She got out of prison in 2008, I believe it was, so she's been clean for 11 years now. And my siblings and I are closer today than we ever were as children. I couldn't be that close to my older brother because he was 10 years older than me, right? So I could idolize him from afar, but it's not like I could say, hey, come skateboarding with me, because, he was driving his Camaro. But today, we share passions. We're both into classic cars. Steve's got an incredible GTX. I've got a 69 GTO. We go to car shows together. My sister and both of my brothers work at the family business, which is still in operation. My older brother runs it. That's probably the one area of my life that I can't fix. I have done everything I can, and I've been really, really successful at it. I'm going to pat myself on the back. I have been really successful at repairing the damage of my past. Really successful. I'm 100% happy with where my life is today. But I can't go work at the family business. That's okay, because I see the stress it puts on my siblings, and I spent 9 years working at the Shepherds of Good Hope, because what better way to give back to the community I took so much from than to work with 300 examples of Joe every day. Male or female, if you're homeless, suffering from any mental health issues and using street drugs, I know what you're going through. Been there, walked in your shoes. So my siblings lived the same life, experienced the same childhood.
So I'm just curious to what extent, you said like, you didn't say your father specifically, you didn't refer, as the person who was saying you're never good enough, you're never going to be that good.
Right,
Whatever.
yeah, it was that.
Was there that kind of a game happening between you and your siblings? I mean, did they also do
No.
that? Did
No.
they? Never?
No, never. No, actually, if anyone gave me any support, or if the siblings got any support from anyone, it was the siblings. I did my best to support my younger brother and my older sister in their endeavors, and my sister was an equestrian rider, and until she broke her hip, it was a passion. For her, it was like it is for me to ride motorcycles. She was on horses all the time. I was her biggest fan, biggest fan. Yeah, no, we had some distance in childhood, which doesn't exist now. We're closer now than, my God, it's like watching, what's that, This Is Us? It's like This Is Us.
Right.
Did you have a question in the back there?
Yeah, I had a question. You were mentioning you worked at the Shepherd Good Hope.
Yeah.
And I'm actually too. I'm a recovered addict as well.
Okay.
I've been recovered for 7 years and change.
Congratulations.
Thanks. And yeah, I really liked your story, by the way. I just wanted to.
Thank you.
It was a really great story. I think the way that you told it was really bang on.
I appreciate
can't
that.
really critique it because I really like what you expressed to us. But my question is, I also have tried to go to the Salvation Army, to the mission, and things of that nature to kind of give back. I used those services for
Yes, sir.
years, and I felt like I need to give back. But unfortunately, when I go to volunteer or ask to get involved, it seems to like there's all these closed doors. Like I'm not really, there's no room. Sorry, you need to be in school. And kind of if you're becoming a police officer or social worker, they're kind of designated for these people.
Right.
So it just kind of was, I don't know, do you have any ideas?
So again, this was another example of how I have been so fortunate in my recovery. When I joined the drug treatment court, one of the champions of the Ottawa Drug Treatment Court is a pretty prominent Ottawa police officer. His name is Sergeant John Gibbons. And John has worked every precinct from South Bank at Leitrim. He's in Orleans now. He was in the market for years. Great, big, tall, bald guy. And he is the nicest man in the world. But he was a champion of the drug court because he worked the market for years, arresting me and people like me for years, right? And thinking to himself, there's got to be a better way. Like throwing a drug addict in jail, do you know what that does? Takes me off the street long enough to put some weight on, I get some sleep, you're paying people to serve me 3 meals a day, and you're gonna give me a book to read. Okay, not sleeping in a ditch tonight. Jail is not that bad. Don't let anybody tell you it is. At least, not when you come from the background I came from, right? I had a cot, I had blankets, I had a shower. And he followed my progress after I graduated. And he actually recommended to at the time, the senior manager of men's operations at the Shepherds of Good Hope that they hire me.
Okay.
So I didn't even apply.
Okay.
I was working
had
at
a
the
bit
John
of a
Howard
role.
Society, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
I don't think this is top secret information. There's a John Howard's residence right here on St. Anne. Right? The old fire hall? That's a John Howard Society residence. John Howard Society is an agency that works with men who are being released from prison and or jail back into the community. They're an incredible agency that helps us learn some of the skills it might behoove us to learn in order to reintegrate into society. Because I didn't learn a lot about societal norms in jail. I learned a lot, but not a lot that works without polishing it and transforming it a little bit before you go to a job interview. So yeah, I was actually released into that John Howard Society residence, and 9 months in, they suggested that it was time for me to move. Joe, you're doing really well. You're 9 months clean and sober. We need the bed. It's time for you to go. And I knew that if they let me go, I was going to use. I was going to pull the wool over everybody's eyes and start using and hiding it from them, just like I did with my ex-wife, because I knew I could. I wasn't able yet to fully trust myself not to use. So I went to see the director and I said, listen, you've got to find a way to keep me here. I'm not ready to go. I need those cameras in the ceiling. I need that bubble. The office is called a bubble because it's just like in a jail or a prison. 5 windows in a 180-degree circle. You can't fart in that building without staff knowing it. And I needed that. So I virtually begged them to find a way to get me to stay. And they couldn't come up with anything. And as happens, I was given exactly what I needed. One of the 2 federal parolees who was a superintendent in the building, janitor, was moving. Like 3 days after they told me I had to go, Derek came to see me to say, Joe, I'm moving to another residence. Why don't you tell them you want my job? So I did that. I went in to see Rob and said, listen, Rob, Derek's moving. I will wash the toilets. I will mop the floors. I will do anything you need me to do. Just let me stay. So I got to stay for another 9 months. I was in that residence for 18 months. And when I left, I was strong enough to leave. I believed enough in myself that I could move. So I moved to the apartment that I'm in now on Lacasse. I'm like in Lacasse, man. It's the war zone still. Like, I don't need cable. There's more entertainment outside my window than I'll ever need cable for. But I've been there for 11 years because I love it. It's my community. So the one gentleman in the back there mentioned that you're in the rooms. I have a white chip taped to my door. So people walk into the apartment, if they know. And I've had people knock. Hey, You a friend of Bill? That's code for, are you in AA? And yes, I am. And yes, I am. Strangers, knock. Can I chat? Come on in. My phone, I leave on 20 hours a day. Because although I'm not still as involved in the rooms of recovery, a lot of people out there that have my number. A lot of people out there that just might need a voice. Or an ear. One or the other. I'm willing to do both. You know, so I do that. Speaking of recovery, when I joined the drug court, they recommended that I go to 90 meetings in 90 days. So I went to 261. Because I had the time, man, right? I put a lot of effort into using. I really did. Don't ever let anybody tell you that drug addiction is stress-free, because it's not. It's not. You try coming up with $1,000 every day when you woke up with nothing in your pocket and you don't have a job. It can be done. It's not easy. There's a lot of stress involved. I don't have that stress anymore. Right? I don't have any of that anymore. I had the time to go to the meetings. So I did. I was at the Cody Street Early Birds every morning. I was at the Nooner every afternoon. I was at the evening. Actually, I didn't always go to the Cody Street evening meeting because it was a bit of a tougher crowd. So I went to various other evening meetings. I mean, there's so many meetings in the city. It was incredible. I walk into the Royal Albert Hospital on a Saturday night and people with a room full of me.
Could you talk a little about the turning point for you? Like, what
Yes.
was it that got you to change direction,
Interesting.
and how did that how did that start out, and how did you manage to stay on that?
I definitely can, and I'm really happy that you asked. As a matter of fact, I think this might be the first time that I've spoken before a group of people and not mentioned it. I always mention it because it's really impactful to me. And again, if I get emotional, that's okay. So, July 17th, 2006, I got arrested. July 18th, I'm on my bunk. This is old hat, man. This is not the first time I've been here. I know what to do. Keep my nose out of everybody else's business. I'm going to read books. I'm going to eat. I'm going to put on some weight. I'm going to get some sleep. The second morning, yeah, I sleep really well, by the way, in jail. I sleep really well anywhere. So, sound sleeper. I wake up the second morning, and I woke up scared. Because I woke up with a literal image in my mind of a candle flame wickering. You know, people at work bring you a cupcake on your birthday with one candle in, you blow it out, and it starts doing that, right? Just before it goes out, the candle flame is wickering, if you will. So I had that image in my mind's eye of a candle flame wickering as I awoke to consciousness. And I knew, I absolutely knew, that that represented the last vestiges of Joe. The last little bit of good that was left in me, I knew that's what that represented. It's about to get snuffed out. If you don't do something, you're going to cross those lines that I never crossed in all of my years of homelessness and addiction and crime and getting arrested. I was a petty thief. I was a shoplifter. I'd go to Loblaws and steal prime rib. Right? I'd go to Blockbuster and steal DVDs. I'd go to Walmart and steal DVDs. I'd go to Home Depot and put a garage door opener on my shoulder and walk right up to customer service and return it. And they would count out $700 in cash into this drug addict's hand. Cash for life, I swear to goodness. But I never was that guy that would hide in the bushes at an ATM. I was never that guy that would brick somebody to get their purse or their wallet. I was never that guy that would wait in a parking garage for you to unlock your car. In my skewed mind, I still had lines I wouldn't cross. And I was terrified that that image of that candle flame blowing out was the last little bit of Joe that wouldn't do those things. I was really afraid of who I might become, and I knew I had it within me, because we all do. We all have a monster in us, believe me. Sometimes it needs a lot to provoke it, but we've all got it. We've all been angrier than we ever want to be again. We've all been so angry we're embarrassed about it the next day. We've all got that monster in us. And I was really, really afraid of embracing him. So that's what led me to call Jerry. I'll tell you what, man, you don't survive homelessness being scared. Okay? You just don't. Being homeless is not a place to be afraid. You cannot show weakness. I am not a big guy. Well, I'm bigger now than I was, but I'm not a big guy, right? I'm not a big beefy guy. I'm not a street fighter by any means. I've maybe been in 5 fights in my entire life. I'm pretty sure I lost 4 of them. Okay, so Street tough? That's not who I am. Street smart? Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty street smart. I can keep my nose out of other people's business, and I can help people to do better or whatever it is they're trying to do, right? So I can always sell myself. But you can't be afraid on the street. You also can't be afraid as a street entrenched drug user. You can't go meet a dealer in a dark alley near the Shepherds of Good Hope, hoping you get an 8-ball, and surely you're afraid. Because you know what's going to happen? You're going to lose your money. You're going to get nothing except for maybe a beating. So fear was not something I was used to. For 18 years, I hadn't been afraid of anything. To wake up that morning in jail afraid, it floored me, man. It really did. It took my breath away. Because the hell is this feeling? I mean, I was almost shaking. I was so afraid. But I was afraid of who I was about to become. And again, that was the impetus. That was what led to me making that phone call to my lawyer and say, I really want to change, man. I want some help. I heard about this drug court. Could you call them? I didn't know what drug court was at the time, except that they helped drug addicts not go to jail. That's as much as I knew, right? Because it's a diversion program. They believe that if you take a drug addict and put them in treatment, the outcome might be better than if you take a drug addict and put them in jail. Guess what? They're right. Who knew? Right? So I'm a pretty big fan of drug courts. I'm a pretty big proponent of the whole drug court model. Huge proponent of treatment. I don't fall into any one category of treatment. If 12 steps work for you, fantastic, it works for me. If they don't, fantastic, they don't have to. Right? As long as something does. I'm never going to pigeonhole myself and do, you've got to do it this way, because I grew up being told, you've got to do it this way. And it made me do it another way. Right? Don't tell me what I got to do. Does that answer it? Kind of?
The turning point, yes. What would you say kept you in there?
Kept me
the first
in recovery?
Yeah, and in recovery. The first, the first part is the hardest, I believe.
Well, the first part is the hardest until the second part and the third part. What kept me in there was an absolute joy of not using. Now, I've been through periods of not using. I didn't use for the love of my ex-wife. I didn't use. There were times when I couldn't come up with the money. I never used in jail. Been to jail a lot, and I never used in jail. There's more dope in jail than there is on the streets. Please don't ever kid yourself. There is more dope inside than there is outside. Okay, there's no problem getting drugs in jail, and I never used in there because I figured. And again, maybe a little bit skewed, but I figured I'm in the man's house. I'm not going to use in the man's house. Just not. My job on the street is to get away with whatever I can get away with. Cop's job is to catch me. I had a reputation with OPS as being a gentleman bandit. Because every time that they pulled up on me, right away, man, my hands were up. I would tell them, listen, I've got a crack stem in that pocket, there's a boot knife in that boot, and I've got 2 40 stones in that pocket. I became known as a gentleman bandit. The cops loved arresting me because I didn't spit on them. I didn't try to kick the windows out of their car. They got me. The jig is up. And that doesn't mean I'm going to quit the game. It just means I lost that hand. That's the way I looked at it. Yeah.
Well, thanks for your story. Absolutely. It's sort of what you've been working off of, but I mean, a lot of people go through dark times. Yours, obviously, a really rough one. But how did you start to love yourself again after all that? I mean, your mom instilled that sense in you. I get that, but like, how do you really pick yourself up? And
you're gonna laugh at this, and please feel free to laugh at it because it sounds so damned hokey. But somebody, my second or third day of treatment, suggested that on my bathroom mirror, I put a piece of paper with the words "I love you" written there. So I did. And every morning when I got up to have a pee or brush my teeth, the first thing I saw was "I love you." I couldn't say it to myself, right? I didn't know how yet. But I could read it. And even if I didn't understand what it meant, I got shivers just now telling you about it, okay? It really, really meant. It was hugely impactful. 3 little friggin' words, man. I love you. Because I never heard it much for 27 odd years, So that was a big piece of it. Believe it or not, that was a huge piece of me being able to love me. But the biggest piece was 2 things that worked really well together, and that was treatment and 12 steps. I don't think either one would have worked on their own. For me, I don't think either one would have worked on their own. If it was just treatment, I was having a hard time understanding a lot of what my counselor was trying to get me to understand. And when I go to the rooms and I would share, somebody inevitably, often referred to as an old timer with lots of experience, would say, Joe, after the meeting, come on outside, we'll have a smoke, I want to talk to you. I used to smoke cigarettes. Those are strong ones too. Maybe you're going to clash. It's okay. I don't have to get along with everybody. I've got to get along with me. I have to get along with me. So that's what I make a point of doing every day. I still, to this day, 13 years in, accept invites to go to coffee with friends all the time. And do you know when I leave? When I decide I've had enough. Not when they decide, okay, it's been great, let's go home now. I'll leave 2 hours before the other 2 or 3 parties. If I decide it's time for me to go, I go. Because you know what would happen if I didn't? I'd build a resentment. And I cannot afford a resentment. I really can't. Because they get really big really fast and they stretch out really, really long. And they ruin weeks of my life. So the trick for me is to wake up every morning grateful. And I do that every morning that I wake up. Grateful just for the fact that I woke up. Because I tried to die lots of times. I never tried to die consciously through suicide attempt. But there were many nights when I would do a huge hit on the pipe and think, yeah, you know what, if you take me tonight, that's okay. You know what, if I don't wake up, it's all right, I'm ready. That was as much effort as I ever put into it, but giving up your will to live, it's a pretty big thing, right? So now, I am so friggin' tickled every morning to just bing, over my eyes. I have to put these on because I can't see without them, and just be happy for it. I have some terrible days. Actually, you know what? That's not true. That's not true. I don't have terrible days. I have some terrible moments. I have some really bad moments where I have to restart. I have to just accept that I can't change whatever it is that's going crappy right now and realize I'm still grateful for the fact that I can feel shitty about something and move on. So I'd have to say that gratitude is the biggest part of my recovery. It's the biggest part. It's the part that keeps me happy all the time. And the other thing is remaining childish. I literally mean that. I am not going to grow up. I have no reason to. No reason to. We were talking earlier this evening. We were talking earlier this evening, I think the 4 of us, about how we can regress as we get older and become more childlike. And I like to think I've got a head start, right? Because why not? So I told you that I worked for 9 years at the Shepherds of Good Hope. Great job. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. A wonderful organization. 9 years in, still love the job. I worked Monday to Friday from 6 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. So I had no weekends off. I was also on my motorcycle by 2:30 in the afternoon every day. Loved it. In April of 2017, my boss came downstairs into my office to say, Joe, next month you're going to change your schedule. I'm sorry, man, but you're going to start working Sunday through Thursday. You'll be off Friday and Saturday. I was like, Jamie, that doesn't fit with my life. Everyone I ride with rides Saturday and Sunday. If it's a long weekend, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. If I was smart, I took Friday off. It's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Working on Sundays just not going to fly. And he said, well, it's not like you're going to quit. So the next day I gave 6 weeks notice and I walked away. I trained somebody to replace me over the course of 6 weeks and I walked away. I mentioned a motorcycle accident. It broke both my legs. I got a settlement from it. Not huge. You don't get huge settlements in Canada. This is not the US. But I got some money, enough that I was able to walk away from my job rather than stay resentful. Because if I would have gone into work on Sundays, not a client there that could use anything I had to offer. Not one. Because I'd be angry. I'd be full of the poor me's. My buddies are riding and I'm here at work. Right? I know that about me. So I had to walk away. I haven't worked since. Now, the settlement's just about gone. I've loved the last 2 years and a bit. They've been incredible. But it's time to start looking for work. So you know what I did? I applied for a job doing something I love to do, which is driving. Hopefully, I'm going to be shuttling cars for Enterprise Rent-A-Car. Between here in Timmins and here in North Bay and here in Montreal and here in Quebec City. And why not? I drive 50,000 kilometers a year anyway in my personal vehicle. Why would I get a job driving? Doing something I love. It's going to keep me happy. There's nothing more important to me. Because if I'm not happy, I can't make you happy. I can't make you happy. I can't make anyone in my life happy. I can't make the people who love me happy. And it's actually not my job to make anybody happy, but I can't help them be happy. If I'm not happy, I can't help them be happy. It's really important to me that the people who love me and that I love are happy together. My best friend in 2012 was given 6 months to live. She was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. And just this week, her oncologist said, I don't need to see you anymore. You're good. 6 months to live, 7 years later, you're good. Mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. And I think the same things that helped me through my recovery helped Susie through her recovery from cancer. Love, positive energy, positive affirmation, the support of people around her, the kick in the ass when she needed it. I get that still when I need it. Wow, I ramble, eh? You ask a simple question. Yes, sir.
I've heard you in talk tonight. Loved it. Still loving it. You've described your younger self in the third person.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that is a conscious choice.
It is. It was a component of treatment. My counselor asked me to tell her a little bit about what it was like being young, my childhood. And I couldn't come up with much because it was way too emotional. It was way too raw. I couldn't feel safe enough to open up about it. So she suggested that maybe I talk about Joe instead of talking about me. Still me, but it made it easier to almost read the story than it was to, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's how it worked, and it worked so well that yes, I still make a conscious effort. Actually, it's not even conscious anymore. When I speak, and the topic of little Joe comes up, it's always third person because, you know what? In many respects, I can look and I look down because he's only 5 or 6, and see him. I can see the strange tuft at the back of my head and looking over my shoulder when someone took a picture at Glengarry Park, and I've got these images of me as a child that I see when I look. And man, oh man, what a great kid he was. What a great kid he was. And
Sounds like you're looking after him.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for recognizing that.
Well, I do the same
absolutely. I'm
thing.
making an effort to look after him.
I do the same thing.
Yeah.
That's why.
And that's why I say so often that I'm a kid, because, okay, so I'm 13 years in now. I guess maybe little Joe, who I really only met again in 2006, I could have aged him, but it just feels right to let little Joe be little Joe. It really does. It just feels right. And there are times almost every day when younger Joe, little Joe, gives me the advice I need. But don't worry about it. It'll be okay. To hear that from a 5 or 6 year old and know that it's impactful and means something, man, yes, sir.
I'm curious about your father.
Mm.
Did he have any friends that you knew of or close relationships? It doesn't sound like he was a happy person, and I also get the feeling that he changed a great deal if you were able to develop a relationship with him when you couldn't do that when you were growing up.
I'm going to venture to say that you are very in tune with things like that. My father did not have a lot of friends. My father had minions. My father had people who worked for him and respected him due to his power and wealth. And some co-workers who were, in the management echelon, if we can say, of his business, because it was Dad's business, who he allowed to feel like they were on his level until he felt the need to point out that they're not. So for Dad, power was everything. Power was everything, and power came through currency. Money was power. And therefore, he alienated a lot of people. And no, did not have. So we moved to the house in Lancaster when I was like 2, and I left when I was 17. So in 15 years of growing up in the family home, I can remember 3 people visiting who were Dad's friends. In 15 years. And I don't mean the same 3 people came over regularly. I mean 3 people in 15 years. And one of them, I'm pretty sure was connected to the mafia. He wasn't a friend at all. I don't know for sure. But yeah, no, Dad didn't have a lot of friends. Because Dad didn't love himself either. right? I mentioned Dad grew up in a tough home. I'm not going to go into details about that because that's Dad's story. He's passed, story's done. But it was a tough home. And Dad was tough. So he was tough on people. And it wasn't until after I got into... So actually it was when my sister went to prison that things started to change for Dad. And he started to soften, if you will. And then when I got out of jail and into treatment, I picked up the phone and called Mom and Dad in Florida right away to say, listen, I've been released and I'm in treatment. And he didn't hang up. So I knew I had his ear. So I told him, listen, I'm going to try and call you guys every Sunday if that's okay, because it's important for me to you to know that I'm doing this. And Dad was, son, I'm proud of you. Call me every Sunday, let us know. And I did, every Sunday. Interestingly enough, I also called my older brother every Sunday for the 18 months that I lived at the St. Anne's residence, and he never once answered the phone. Not once. I left voicemails every week for 18 months and never got a call back. Until that next call, and it was 18 months, when he did answer. And he simply, I was like, oh my God, you answered. And he said, sorry, Joe, but I had to believe you were doing it. And that's, dude, I respect that. 100%. You've got to protect you. I get that. But Jesus, 18 months. We laughed about it then, we laugh about it now. There's not much I don't laugh about these days, to be honest with you. Because it's just what gets me through every day. It literally is a really good medicine. Yeah, so Dad did change. And unfortunately, and it's the case often, folks, and I hope it doesn't have to be the case for anyone in the room, and if it's the case for any of your loved ones, I hope that you can help that change. But often the change comes too late. Like it happened early enough for Dad and I to become friends. We became friends. I'm a hugger, so I could hug my dad as my friend. I couldn't hug him as my dad. I couldn't.
Great message, very powerful. Congratulations on finding Joe again. I was going to ask you, obviously a lot of hard work for you. If somebody asked you, what are the safety nets that you would have in place for them? Because, you know, they say it's hard to get to treatment, and once you're at treatment, it's easy. But when you leave treatment, and
well,
you're
it's
on your
not
own,
necessarily easier once you're there, but
Yeah.
I know what you mean. It's easier to not use because you're being
Right.
monitored.
Yeah, so when you leave and just watching intervention on TV and stuff like this is when people relapse. So what would your professional or your expertise with dealing with this and being sober for 13 years, what would you recommend somebody have in place as safety nets in case they were going to stray off, what to do, that kind of stuff? What would you
The most
recommend
important
there?
one, and it's the hardest. The most important one, when I got out of jail, I had a cell phone, right? I was a drug dealer, drug user, needed a cell phone. When I got out of jail, I got my phone back. But the person from drug treatment court took possession of my phone until we got to the John Howard's residence here in Vanier. And then she gave me my phone back and said, okay, now with me sitting here, I want you to open your contacts and erase it. And I erased every phone number in my phone with the exception of my parents and my older brother. That was the only two numbers she would let me keep. Then she had me put in the number for the treatment center I was going to, which was Ridewood. And she had me put in the number for the AA intergroup office at the Bronson Center downtown. So those, I had like 4 numbers in my cell phone, and that was it. So the first thing I had to do was let go of my past. Now, my story isn't the same as everybody's. When I came into recovery, everyone I knew was a drug user or a drug dealer or someone somehow connected with criminal activity. That was my life for 18 years. Of course, that's who was in my phone. I had to lose every single one of those numbers. As a matter of fact, when Louise was having me delete those numbers, I asked her, listen, before I delete this number and this number, I owe them both large. I gotta call them and let them know. So she let me. And I called 2 dealers that I owed a lot of money to. And for whatever reason, because the universe has decided I'm going to be successful in my recovery, both of those drug dealers said, as long as you stay clean, that's fine. Wow. I wiped out like $5 grand in debt. Awesome. the biggest thing I had to do was leave my old life behind. So anything that didn't serve me in recovery, I had to leave. None of the people, I didn't have any friends. Okay, so I came into recovery 100% friendless. I had a counselor in treatment, and my second day at treatment, I was told to pick a meeting, and I lived in Vanier. I might go to the Early Birds, it's on Cody Street. Funny story there. Leave the residence, John Howard's residence, at 7:30 to go to the meeting at Cody Street, the Early Birds meeting, which starts at 8, and walk to Cote Street, and that's nowhere near Cody Street. So I was late for my first meeting, but you know what? It worked in my favor. I walked in, the meeting was starting late. First meeting I ever walked into in the rooms of AA, and the chairperson said, "Oh, a newcomer, will you be my secretary?" I was like, "I'm sorry, what?" I just need somebody to sit down and read some papers for me while I'm chairing the meeting. So my very first meeting, I was asked the secretary. Again, my higher power, who I can now call God, knew he had to put some things in place for me. One of them, you're going to go into the rooms, you're going to go in head first. And I bit into recovery like a pit bull, man, and I never let go. So the other safety net, I went to the Cody Street Vanier Early Birds meeting and introduced myself to everyone and told them a little bit about who I was, because I thought I was special and I thought that my story might make them all go, "Oh my God, you really need some help." Found out I was no different than anybody else in the rooms, and they all offered me their phone numbers. So I took them. So within 3 days of getting out of jail, I probably had 25 phone numbers in my phone, and each and every one of them was someone in recovery. And my parents, and my older brother. So the biggest one for me, and I dare say for most people coming into a change of life, is change your life. You cannot change a part of it. If that part is using or alcohol that you feel like needs changing, and not change everything that's behind it. It's like shining, if I was to shine a flashlight right at your face right now, there's going to be a bit of a shadow behind you, and that beam of light is going to split, and everybody in that beam of light needs to be cut off. I needed to get rid of it. And I did. And I've never gone back to I have one person in my life today who was in my life then, and he has been clean 2 months. 2 months less a week, longer than I have. So he'll celebrate May 25th, 13 years, and July 18th, I celebrate 13 years. And he's the only person from my past. We snowmobile together all the time. We talk about recovery together all the time. You know what we don't talk about? We don't talk about what it was like to use. We were both there. We don't need to talk about it. So that's another big thing. Not to romanticize what I went through. I talk about it now because it's part of my story, and I tend to speak publicly, well, as often as I can, and it's several times a year, and it's part of my story, so I share it. But when I'm not speaking like this, if I'm just talking with a friend or two, I'm not talking about what it was like to use. Because if they never did use, they don't need to know. And if they did use, they know. Right? Phone numbers, and I don't have one, and there doesn't seem, oh, there's one. Would you hand me that phone? Or that one, sure. Weighs about 8 ounces. Early recovery, it feels like it weighs 50 friggin' pounds. It's the hardest thing to do is pick up a phone when you feel like you need to call someone. Train yourself or encourage your friend, whoever that might be, to pick up the phone. It'll save your life. It'll save your life.
And that was the other question I was going to ask you. Did you have to really reach out a lot at the very beginning?
Yeah.
And were you afraid because you were sort of in nowhere's lands there, that you would be rejected by one of these calls? Did that ever cross your mind?
So
calling and somebody wouldn't be there for you?
It did cross
And
my
then you would
mind
maybe
until the first phone call.
Okay.
So it crossed my mind, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to do this. If I
So you
wake
made
up
the
at 4 in the
first
morning and I'm in crisis, I'm not going to be able to call somebody because they'll hang up or they won't answer. And when it did happen, the person did answer and was there for me. We spent an hour talking on the phone until I was fine, and then that let it go. That let it go. Now, see, I'm really lucky, guys. I don't suffer concurrent disorder, which is to say that along with my addiction, I don't suffer a mental illness or a mental issue of any kind. I'm not on any meds. everyone that I know in recovery, virtually, either suffers from debilitating anxiety or really heavy depression. And knocking on wood, I wish I understood depression more than I do. I don't want to understand it through experience, but I wish I understood it more than I do, because my God, it looks debilitating. My best friend is a depressive. He suffers from depression quite heavily, and my best male friend, Susie's my best friend. But my best friend suffers from depression, and well, as an example, he called me yesterday. I had plans to go to Tanner with Susie. We were going to go shopping, and he picked up the phone and called me yesterday. My phone rang. I looked. I saw who it was. Hey, what's up? And I could tell from the tremor in his voice that he was in crisis. And he just said, "Hey, you got plans?" I said, "Actually, yeah. Susie and I are going to Tanner. Do you want to come along?" No, it's okay. And he was about to hang up. So I said, dude, what's going on? Whoa, what's up? I said, do you need me? And he said, I'm not going to make it out of the house, so yeah, I need you. I said, well, then come to Tanner. And he said, well, give me 5 minutes and I'll think about it. And I hung up. And it didn't take 5 seconds for me to realize, wait a minute, Susie's not suffering anything except maybe not going to Tanner. So I picked up the phone and called him right back. I said, dude, listen, I'm going to come and pick you up, and we're going to go do whatever the hell it is you need to do. If you're okay with Susie joining us, that's great. If not, that's fine. It'll just be me and you. So it was the 3 of us. We spent the whole day together, and by the end of the day, he was fine. I was going to try and use some big words to tell you how fine, but I don't need to, because it was fine. And he thanked me for being there, and I thanked him for calling me. If you've received phone calls, I'm sure, in the past from someone who just needed something that they thought was huge, that to you was minor, and you know what? You can feel the power of the thank you when people say, hey, dude, thanks for being there. Or hey, girl, thanks for being there. I mean, it's huge. It does so much for my recovery to be there for somebody else.
So these individuals are genuine.
Oh, yeah.
And then I heard too, if you have a dual diagnostics, like you have a mental disorder and you also have an addiction, they have to treat the mental disorder first.
Thankfully, that's changing. Thankfully, that's changing. So, as a brief example, I spent 9 years working at Shepherds of Good Hope. I challenge you, out of the 290 odd heads in the bed in that main building at King Edward and Murray every night, 290 people, I challenge you to find 5 that aren't suffering a mental illness. And out of those, find 2 that are on the meds. Right? If you've got any experience at all with addiction or know of people who are homeless, they're not taking the meds. So for me to pick up the phone and call the ministry and say, I'd really like to get into treatment. Have you ever been diagnosed? Yes, I have. Are you on your meds? No, I'm not. Well, you're going to have to get or a psychologist that gets some meds. It ain't happening. But thankfully, the treatment community is realizing that. And they're just starting now to accept anyone into treatment and treat the drug addiction or the alcohol addiction or the food addiction or the gambling addiction, whatever it might be, without saying, I'm sorry, but until your head's right, you can't come and see us. Because it's basically what they were saying, right? You've got to get your medication. Now, if you're telling me that, what I'm hearing is, you don't trust me to come in there because you think I'm unstable. Well, you're freaking right, I'm unstable. I'm on street drugs. I've been for years. Isn't that enough? So anyhow, thankfully that's changing. What else would I recommend for support? So for me, again, I mentioned how the 2 components of treatment and 12-step recovery rooms worked. For me, my advice is always to try 12 steps. Try it. Give it a shot. Just give it a shot. I went in there thinking I know everything, and I was actually convinced I could make a few people understand there's no such thing as God at the time, because I thought I was agnostic. Actually, I thought I was an atheist. And discovered I was agnostic. And thought, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to convert a few people and I'm going to have some agnostics on my arm. And that didn't happen. That didn't happen at all. People were happy to accept me as who I was. I used to tell people, so in the rooms they talk about a higher power. Eventually you may come to call your higher power God. My first 6 months, I loved telling people that my higher power was a hamster named Frank. What? That was part of old Joe, right? That was part of the Joe that's got to poke you with a stick And that's what I did, and they loved me for it anyway. They loved me till I could love myself. That's something you hear a lot in the recovery community, and it's the truth. I can't tell you how powerful. I'm going to repeat it. I love you on my mirror. Oh my God. Oh my God. What a huge thing for me. Yes, sir.
Still there?
Is it still there? No, it's not. It's right there. I don't need the words anymore because I'll tell you what, my very best friend is me. I absolutely love me. Absolutely love me. I'm a wonderful individual and I know that. I don't need anybody to tell me. It feels great when people say, hey, you're a pretty good guy. It feels great. I don't need it because I love me. It took a long time. It was a long, long road. The last person that loved me, I was able to not use for, and that was my ex-wife, Angela. You know? So, yeah.
I'm interested in what we might do here. Now, you said, I think, that a men's organization helped you.
So, yeah, I didn't mention that either. I was a member of the Men's Project when it was still the Men's Project. Because
it was in the YMCA building in Argyle.
I suffered abuse. Okay, it wasn't all emotional and psychological. I have suffered abuse. And I needed a place that was safe for me to talk about that. And even in treatment, when I was in treatment, I really would. In a room with 8 or 10 or 12 other street entranced ex-convicts, addicts, whatever examples of me, right? 12 more people just like me. Man, I don't want to talk to you about abuse because I don't know you from Adam. Right? I wasn't comfortable doing it. So my counselor handed me a pamphlet. She didn't say a word. She was so smart. Oh my God, she was insightful. She just handed me a pamphlet. So here, take this home. I took it home. I didn't even open it. It was in my knapsack. I didn't even open it till like Sunday. It comes up and it was the Men's Project. I remember it, green and white, green on the bottom, white on top. The Men's Project. I opened it up. No, that's not me. To get honest with myself. I guess that is me. Holy crap, that was uncomfortable. That might have been the hardest part of my entire recovery, was accepting that that's me. It's not something I've heard about. It's something I've lived. And thank God, the Men's Project existed. It was a safe place for me to go and talk about. And it led to actually it was huge. The Men's Project was huge in allowing me to love myself again, for sure. I did have those, I loved you on the mirror, and that was the biggest part, but, you know, it's like opening your wallet. Everything in your wallet is important, or it wouldn't be in your wallet. But some of it could probably be in that dish in the cupboard, or on your dresser. For whatever reason, it's in your wallet, and you carry it with you all the time, every day. And I didn't need to carry parts with me anymore every day. I could take them out of the wallet that is Joe and put them on a shelf. And the Men's Project taught me how to do that. And I have a feeling that's what this organization tries to do for men and their families. It's just take some of the stuff you don't need to have with you every day and put it aside. You know, when you really do need to look at it, it's going to be there. We all know that. It's never not going to be there. You're not going to look at it every day. I don't know. I just come up with all of that while we're talking about it, but it makes sense to me. It makes sense because I'm a bit of a strange bird. I have 2 wallets, one that I use in the winter, one that I use in the summer. My winter wallet is a tall wallet that fits in the inside pocket of my long leather jacket. My summer wallet, typical guy, is that big thick thing that causes my hip to go numb when I'm driving and probably gives me all kinds of back problems. So I changed wallets yesterday. I took my winter wallet and put everything in my summer wallet, and that's how that whole thing just happened. Everything happens because of something we've done, and yes, I just used my changing of the wallets as a euphemism in a story about recovery. Use what we've got, right? We've all got stuff we don't use, and it's so powerful. Each and every one of us in this room have parts of us that we don't use on a regular basis. When we do use them, for just a moment, it feels great. And then we shy away from it, and we forget about it, and we minimize it, and we don't use it again for a long, long time until it pops out for whatever reason, and oh, it feels great. So use it more. Use it more. Do it. If it makes you smile, do it. If it energizes you, do it. And if it's not you, but you know what energizes somebody else, do it. Be the battery. Plug in. Okay. Whoops. I just moved. I love this. I'm sorry.
I really like what you were just saying with that wallet analogy.
It worked out pretty neat, didn't it?
It reminded me, I can relate it to, actually, I was just talking in a group like this recently about how I'm struggling with a little bit of that, like moving forward with me, right? Like learning to love myself and how to be my own best friend and go like, no, yeah, I want to take care of this guy. This guy's like all I got. I gotta take care of him better.
Yeah.
And I'm realizing that that's kind of the beginning of why I fell into my addiction and whatnot, right? But what I'm trying to relate to is here, I was thinking in my head of like this metaphor to describe it to the guys, and I was saying like, it's rough. I have lots of these defensive mechanisms that I was homeless, man. I was there, Vancouver, downtown, you know, it's real rough. Yeah, East Hastings. So like, yeah, I've been there. But, you know, and I survived and I got past it. But, you know, I built up some pretty strong defenses while there like, to protect myself from dying, survival tactics or things. And I related to like this tank. It's like I have this tank inside me, right? And it's getting me into trouble like more recently, you know, and me not realizing I'm trying to head towards a more peaceful part of my life. And the analogy I was using is that like I'm trying to head into like a nice peaceful garden. It's all perfectly pristine and nice. And here I am with this big clunky World War II tank trying to sneak it through. Right. And like that's not gonna work. I gotta get rid of this tank, this whole tank. This doesn't serve me any good anymore. It did in the past. I'm still here because I protected myself, but now it's time to get rid of that. I feel shed it and move towards, you know, a little bit more vulnerable, but a little bit more like getting back in touch with me. What makes me happy? Using my gift, all that stuff that you're talking about. You know? Yeah.
And if I may,
but how do I get rid of that tank?
So there's a lot of parts of it that you can shed, but don't shed all of it.
Okay.
Because you survived what you survived, learning a multitude of skills that are transferable to a new life. They absolutely are. So when you were downtown, East Hastings, if somebody you knew came up to you and said, dude, I need to score, you could probably help them do that, right? You knew where to go and how to go and what to do, and you knew the steps to take.
Okay. Yeah.
So in this whole idea of a life of recovery, people are going to come to you and say, dude, I need help. I'm not understanding step 3. Or, dude, I need help. I really feel like using right now. And you might know how to steer and get and do exactly what they need. You've got those skills. You just have to refocus them. Yeah. And that was, again, another thing that I was taught in treatment. I learned so much being homeless. I learned so much about how to survive this world being homeless. And most of what I learned, I get to use today. I just look at it through a different lens. Early in recovery, I had people in the rooms who were also in recovery that just wanted to smack me because I was always so friggin' happy. Joe Pink was my nickname because I was on a pink cloud all the time. And I'm still there. I have no reason not to be. Yes, I've tripped and fallen and scraped my knees, had a bad accident. I've had, good Lord, I've got to go for another root canal on Monday. Like, things happen, right? But I'm able to meet life on life's terms now without saying, I'm going to need to numb that pain with a couple of 8 balls and maybe a 5th Gibson's. I don't need to do that. I really don't. I'm just realizing maybe the biggest change is it's okay for me to feel. I'm not afraid to feel anymore. This is the first time in years where I have stood up in a room and talked and not actually cried. You may remember I came really close to tears teaching applied suicide intervention skills training, right? I'm a teacher, I'm a trainer. I'm training people how to apply intervention in the realm of suicide. And talking about some of the models in that training bring me to tears. Tonight I was able to do, and I warned you, it might happen, but it didn't. I don't know why, because it's okay for me to feel. If I feel like crying, believe me, I'm gonna cry. I am a sobbing mess in theaters. Oh my good Lord. I cried during the Avengers. Like, what? Yeah, because I feel stuff. I'm allowed to feel. Why wouldn't I? Right, if I can laugh, and I laugh, then I can cry too. And you know what, I can get angry. Things piss me off. That's okay. It's absolutely fine. As long as I don't live in it. I used to live in it, right? I used to live in my pain. I used to live in what I can't feel anymore. Help me not feel it, right? Take that hole a little deeper. I was, oh boy. So yeah, don't focus on shedding the entire tank. Shed some of the armor from the tank. Maybe turn it into a Jeep Wrangler, right?
Yeah.
Who knows? But it doesn't have to all be cast away. There's a lot that you learned that you should keep with you, because there's skills that are going to help you and help others.
Yeah, sounds like really good advice. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for asking.
I think first of all, I'd like to say thank you just like everybody else, and I think that part of what makes it so appealing, just like your presence, is you're very relatable and you're very open and honest about who you are, which I think maybe it lets everybody just feel a little bit more comfortable about all of our own different vulnerabilities, and I think that's really courageous and special, so thank you for sharing that. But I'm also curious just to understand a little bit, it sounds like a lot of peer support was a really important component. And so how heavily do you think that plays into the success of people's recovery, like those people that are there at the right times who've had the experience and gone through what you've gone through before?
So, simply, I think it's vital. And interestingly enough, the peer support is there for everyone who wants it. And it's not there for anyone who doesn't. So that's why coercive treatment doesn't work. If we force Canadian prisons, Canadian jails have no treatment components to them whatsoever, because you're only there for up to a maximum of 2 years. 2 years and a day or longer, you go to prison. And in prison, they actually have some programs to help people with issues like drug addiction or alcoholism. NSAP, excuse me. I was trying to come up with the acronym, but the National Substance Abuse Program is a program in prison that every inmate has to enroll themselves in if they want to increase their pay rate. So the only thing you've got to look forward to in prison is getting paid to do prison labor, whatever that might be, whether it's kitchen or laundry or whatever it might be. And if you want to increase your rate, the way the government has decided we're going to help you do that is to coerce you when you're going to NSAP. Now the trouble is, forcing me to do something I don't want to do doesn't work at all. As a matter of fact, it might make me resentful and resist help. So I mention that because people who want recovery will have a peer support network around them that's already there. They're just going to discover it. Their peers will let them know they're there. But people who don't want recovery, if we try and get a family member to get clean for us, because Johnny, don't you understand how much better life would be if you just stopped using? It's not going to work. Somebody mentioned intervention, watching the TV show Intervention. And I think every episode shows an example of that. The person who everybody thinks needs recovery doesn't need recovery until they need recovery. And the moment I decided I needed to change my life, and I reached out for help, I didn't know the help was there, but the moment I reached out, man, my hands were filled. They were filled with help. I couldn't beat it off with a stick. So yeah, the peer support network is huge, but the great thing is, in the recovery community, it's there. Now, it's not going to be the guy you used to drink with last Friday, or the gals you drank with in college, you know what I mean? Like, you can't go to people you used to use with as your peers. It's not going to work, right? It's just not. You don't put a flat on a car when you're changing a flat. You put a perfectly sound new tire on to get you where you're going. So in recovery, you don't reach out for help to the people who, you got to change your thinking, right? You've got to change your thinking, you've got to change your life. The definition, I'm sure you've all heard it, but the definition of crazy, repeating the same behaviors over and over and over, expecting different results. You're never going to get different results. You do the same things you've always done, you're going to get the same results you've always got.
Yeah.
Does that answer it, kind of?
Yeah, no, I guess I'm just kind of thinking about the center too, and just different ideas about having, but I mean, I know in kind of addiction fields and recovery, you have kind of sponsors and things like that, and just kind of thinking about some of the people who come.
Couple of posters up on the wall.
Yeah.
Help us here if you need it.
Yeah.
Making sure you shake every hand if the person is willing to be hand shook. Hug people who want to be hugged. Let them know we are here. We are here for you. Make sure they believe it. They're not going to believe it at first. They're going to hug you back and, okay, it's great to be here, and you told me you'll be here for me. And maybe invite people to leave their number. I don't know. Maybe there's a phone book that we could have on the wall, right? That's how we do it in the 12-step rooms. There's a binder that people in recovery will put in the meeting rooms. They'll sign their name, generally not with a last name, and a phone number. That's how I got a bunch of phone numbers. Because I knew Ron C had something I wanted. So I got his phone number, right? So maybe that's an idea. I will tell you that trying to push anything on anyone, it's not going to work. Right? Not going to work.
Just got a question, like you mentioned, say, we're doing an intervention on this person, Johnny, if only you stop using everything would be better. Aren't they part of some kind of an ecosystem where they're just filling a role, and then it's not them in isolation, there's parts of the family that are encouraging and maintaining that particular.
We call it enabling. That's the word for it. No family member wants to believe they're enabling their brother, sister, aunt, uncle, father, mother, son, daughter to continue behaviors of killing them. But family members do it all the time. One of my very close friends has only just recently managed to stop giving her daughter money. Her daughter is on the streets, homeless, with a terrible crack habit, and she can't say no when her daughter comes home for a meal and $100. And she's finally stopped. And I'm hoping that soon she'll stop with the meal too. And that the daughter won't have this place to come and put on a pound or two and maybe get a good night's sleep before I go back out and rip it again. Because you don't need a shelter in the storm. It's not what any of us as addicts need. We don't need a shelter in the storm. We need to turn our lives around to a place where we don't need a shelter, right? I carry my own umbrella. I don't need a shelter in the storm anymore. I will use it. Oh my God, when I was using, you offer me anything and I'm there. Because man, oh man, I need it. You have no idea how much I need it. Thank you so much. You're such a helpful person. My God, you made a difference in my life until I leave and go pick up another 8-ball and who, what? Oh yeah, that was sorry, but that's the way addiction is. Addiction controls my life. It controls the life of the addict. Love doesn't. Yes.
Yeah, I just have seen interesting parallels between some of what you said with drug use and with mental illness, and some things I've seen, which is with people buying it, the drug user. My life is fine, everything's fine. Someone who's mentally ill, right? There's nothing wrong with me. Why would I change? And until you get past that, I guess the question is, talk to drug use. Do you have any ideas for mental illness? How to sort of break through that when clearly, despite whatever issue, hoarding, abuse, whatever, there's nothing wrong with that.
I honestly can't offer any personal words of support or wisdom in that vein simply because I don't have the lived experience. But I can say that letting the individual in question know that you love them. Not letting them know you love them by giving them money or by paying their rent, or just letting them know in no uncertain terms that I love you. Whatever's going on, I love you. And maybe allowing for the safe space for the conversation to come up. I mentioned my friend who suffers depression, and he also suffers anxiety. And he goes off his meds. And when he goes off his meds, things go bad fast. Fast. But you know what? I'm comfortable enough now to say, hey, dude, stop taking your meds. And I'm not straightforward about it. Did you stop taking your meds? Well, I didn't stop. I just forgot to take them yesterday and the day before. Okay, so let's go to the pharmacy. And I've driven him right to the pharmacy. Oh, no, I don't need to go to the pharmacy. I've got a refill at home. Well, then let's go home. And I've gone with him home. And sat there until he's taken a med. And sat there for another hour and talked until I felt I'm not in control of this. I've done what I think I can. I'm going to leave. Right? And inevitably, he's picked up the phone and said, hey, dude, thanks, man. I needed that. So the unfortunate thing about a lot of medications are the side effects. Weight gain is a huge one. So anti-anxiety meds and antidepressants bring weight gain with them. And you know what, I'm not happy with the little paunch I've got here. If I was on antidepressants and put on 30 more pounds, pretty sure I'd feel good enough to stop my meds pretty soon. Right? It's you made a very, very good analogy when you said, you talk to the addict who's nothing's wrong with me, my life is fine. And I was going to jail every few months, and that was fine. I was living on the street, homeless, wrapping myself up in a barbecue cover, and that was fine? No, it's not fine now, but it was then, right? Because that's where I was. So maybe that's another big part that I haven't talked about. We gotta meet people where they're at, eh? Not where we want them to be, because where we want them to be is really selfish. It's where we want them to be. So let's not be selfish about it. Maybe tomorrow's gonna be better. Maybe tomorrow's gonna be worse. Just accept them where they're at. It's tough. I mean, we all need that 10-pound phone, right? Those of us who don't suffer, and I include myself now because I don't feel like I suffer anymore, it's just as hard for us to pick up the phone and call someone else to say, holy God, Susie was taxing today. I have no idea what it's like to listen to her go on and on about cancer. I'm using that as an example. Susie's never been taxing and never gone on and on about cancer. She wouldn't have beat it if she had. But you know what I mean. We've all got people in our lives that it's good to take a break from for a while. And we need our own support network for that. And maybe this is the place. Right? I don't know. We all have to find our own place. I do know that first time ever coming in this room, and I'm invited here for the first time to speak, know that this is a safe place. I've never been here before, and I know it's a safe spot. I know that I can come in here any evening and be accepted. I know that. Maybe that's all we have to do. Make sure people know that. You guys didn't have to go into great lengths to make me feel that. Nobody said, Joe, this is a safe spot. Joe, are you okay? You didn't do that. You greeted me. You said, it's nice to see you. Right? Let's treat each other like human beings. Because that's all we're doing is trying to be human. What do you think? Anything else?
That's great.
Thank you.